So far in this course, we've used one type of aggregation in SQL, which is the count function. Now let's talk about some new functions to aggregate data. In this video, we'll cover the sum, AVG, min, and max functions. Each of these functions should be self-explanatory. Sum allows us to sum a given value across rows. AVG, or average, finds the average of a given value across rows. Min can find the smallest value of a given value across rows, whether that's a number, a date, or a letter. And then max can find the highest value of a given value across rows. For this tutorial, let's suppose we want to gather some aggregate details about each of our customers. We want to know not only how many films they have rented from our company, but we also want to know how much money each person has spent. What is the average length of the films each person has rented? When was each person's earliest rental date? And when was each person's most recent rental date? Sum, AVG, min, and max will all help us answer these questions. We'll start by adding a left join to our payment table on payment.rentalID equals rental.rentalID and payment.customerID equals customer.customerID. We want this to be a left join because we're trying to find out how many movies each customer has rented. If we were to make this an inner join, we would only be able to determine how many movies each customer rented that they then paid for. Next, we'll reintroduce the count aggregation, and we'll say count star as count of rentals. And then, of course, as you know, we need to add a group by clause, so we can get rid of our distinct and then say group by customer information. Finally, let's add order by for descending to order our results by count of rentals in descending order. Let's test our query to make sure it works, and it does. So the first thing that we want to find out is how much money each customer has spent at our business. For this, we can sum the amount column from the payment table. So let's add a new line to our select clause and say sum, open parenthesis, payment.amount, close parenthesis, as total money spent. And then let's run the query. Okay, that's easy enough. We now have a column for that data. Let's keep going. We now need to find the average length of all the films each customer has rented. So add a new line to the select clause and type AVG, open parenthesis, film.length, close parenthesis, as average film length, and then run the query again. Now we can see the average film length in our results as a number with 16 decimal places after it. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. Let's keep going to get our earliest and most recent rental dates for each customer. Add a line to our select and type in min, open parenthesis, rental.rental date, close parenthesis, as earliest rental date. Then let's add another line where we say max rental date as latest rental date. Now let's run the query, and we see our two date columns have been added as well. Let's tweak a couple more things. First, we want to take our average film length column and shorten it to just 2 decimal places. Before we do that, let's introduce ourselves to some new SQL terminology: precision and scale. Precision refers to the number of digits contained in a number, regardless of decimal places, while scale refers to the number of digits that occur after the decimal point. If we take the number 123.45 as an example, this number has a precision of 5 and a scale of 2. For another example, suppose we're looking at the number 9876.54321. This has a precision of 9 and a scale of 4. This is important because we're about to use a couple of functions that require us to set the scale we want on our output. Specifically, we're going to use a function called Trunc and another called round. If you've ever done basic math in school, you can guess what the round function does. The function has 2 arguments, a number, which could be a number that we type in or a number from a column in our query, and the scale, which is the number of decimal places we want the round function to round to. So let's copy our average line from our select clause and then paste it below itself. Then let's wrap that AVG function inside of a round function, then add a comma after it, then the number 2, and a second close parenthesis. Then let's change the name of our column from average film length to average film length rounded inside parenthesis, and then run the query. And as we scan the results, we can see that the round function does exactly what it promises. It takes our average film length and rounds it up or down to the nearest decimal place that we specified. Now, what's the difference between round and trunc? They both have two arguments, a number and the number of decimal places that you want. The difference is that round will round the number, while trunc will not round it. Trunc is short for truncate. It will take any number you give it and shorten it. So let's copy the line from our select clause that has our round formula, and then paste it below itself to make a new line. And let's replace round with trunc and change the alias to average film length truncated. Now run the query again. Now we have the truncated column added to our results as well, but look at these numbers side by side with the rounded numbers, and it's easy to spot the difference. For instance, take our customer Tim Carey, whose average length of the films he has rented is 114.769. The round function takes that number and rounds it up to 114.77, while the trunc function just cuts off the number after 2 decimal places, leaving it at 114.76. When using trunc, if you don't specify the number of decimal places you want, the function will default to 0. In other words, it assumes you want 0 decimal places, so it will take a decimal number and truncate it to a whole number. The round function will do the same thing, of course, except it will actually round the number up or down to the nearest whole number. So to demonstrate this, let's copy the 2 lines we just wrote, then paste them below themselves. Then let's remove the comma 2 from each function, and let's change their aliases to say either rounded whole or truncated whole. Now run the query again. We now have 2 new columns added to our results, and if we look again at customer Tim Carey, we see that his value of 114.77 has been rounded up by our first new column to 115, the nearest whole number, while the second column has simply truncated the value to 114. Now that you're getting familiar with the basics of SQL, we're starting to increase the number of different functions we're throwing at you. It's kind of a memorization game. Once the syntax and rules of SQL have become ingrained in you, the next thing you need to worry about is memorizing all the various functions that are available to you in this language. And trust me, there are a lot. But the good news is that this course is not meant to be an exhaustive review of SQL. We're not going to learn every single function, but I want to familiarize you with some of the most important ones, while also introducing you to how these functions work.